Hello, my name is Gabriel Epstein, and this is my oral presentation for Composition 2 English. My topic is mental illness a pivotal contributor to the rise in teen crime, teen addiction, and suicide throughout the United States? Now, this will directly target teens and adults that have teens or work with teens to basically read signs of mental illness so that they can act before it's too late, and it'll lead them to either teen crime, addiction, or suicide. And that goes with my hypothesis, which is if I provide enough information that contributes to stopping mental illness, teen crime, and suicide, then there will be less rise in teen crime, addiction, and suicide. So it's very straightforward. And I'd like to provide some facts to help understand how detrimental this is and how difficult it is to understand. So over 60% of youth with depression do not receive any mental health treatment. This is very important because if you don't get help, then it will lead down one of these paths. Nearly 3 million youth in the U.S. are living with severe depression. 3 million is a lot. I think it's roughly, I want to say 15% of the teen population. So it's definitely a big deal. Actually, no, not 15, more like 12. I read in an article. And then another thing I like to point out is suicide is the second behind heart illness, second in deaths for teens. So it's very important to look into that aspect. We don't want teens committing suicide, and most of the teens that do commit suicide are either suffering depression, ADHD, schizophrenia, which are all forms of mental illness. So that's very important to point out. And another thing I'd like to discuss is moving forward. So I'm almost finished with my actual project for my research paper. I just need to look at some more evidence to provide and build my body paragraphs to the best of my ability. I definitely want to make sure that all of my stuff is not plagiarized, or not plagiarized, I'm sorry, credible. So as it goes to my sources, which I can list out, which is, one of my main sources is Lisa Flores. She wrote Depression Puts Teens at Risk. This is a very good article for me. She is credible. She is a scholarly writer, and she has a multiple books that are very highly rated. So I will be using that. She goes into detail about how depression affects teens, how it can lead to suicide, how it can lead to addiction. That's another big thing, is teens drinking a lot and then they start going down a rabbit hole that they can't escape. Another one I'd like to point out is Mike Males. He wrote The Extent of Teen Suicide is Exaggerated. This is an important article because it kind of counters what I'm trying to say. It's basically saying that teen suicide is too known, or not known, but too it's exaggerated than what it really is. Now I will use this to kind of provide another viewpoint. So some people might read my article and be like, oh, this is bogus or whatnot. So I will provide their point and then counter it with actual evidence that it's not exaggerated, and it needs to be spread. The word just needs to be out there so that teens will remain safe and won't have to go through mental illness. Another one I'd like to point out is Kendall Coker for Crime and Psychiatric Disorder in Youth in the U.S. Population. This one is just kind of a graph or a data sheet. It provides multiple how many teens go to prison with mental illness and why. Another key factor is understanding why these teens are doing things and what they have if they come in like an insane asylum and they have mental illness from a very young age and they committed a serious crime, I will be able to get the data provided from that article. So that's a very important one. It helps my hypothesis a lot. And then my last one I'd like to provide is Nikki Babbitt, Teen Addiction is a Disease. Again, it just helps strengthen my body paragraphs, and she's very credible. She's actually has a PhD at I believe Yale, so that's very important too. She is probably my most credible source, and she's also wrote many scholarly articles. Now, I'd like to provide some direct quotes. So Ms. Croker states that the prevalence of crime was 18.4% increase from youth with lifetime psychiatric disorders compared to no disorders. Now, this is a very important quote. It aligns with my hypothesis directly, and it just shows how much, like, throughout time, and I believe this is with this is like a 50-year dissipation from when this data was taken, and 18.4% is extreme number. So any type of psychiatric disorders is just gonna increase the amount of crime, teen crime that can happen. So that is very important. And then another one I'd like to point out is, according to the 2007 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, 11.7% of 12 to 17-year-olds reported non-medical use of psychiatric drugs at some point in their lives, with 3.3% being in the past month. Now, this is very important. This leads to addiction. A lot of parents, whenever they have a child suffering some sort of mental illness, they like to just give them a pill that the doctor prescribes, and from a very young age they learn in their head that they need that to keep going. So it's very important to point out that aspect, and it also leads to heavy addiction when they're older. So that's also very important. And then the last one I'd like to, according to the CDC Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, depression and other psychiatric disorders play a primary role for teen suicides, and depressed teens who also abuse alcohol or drugs, the suicide or the risk of suicide is even greater. So that's kind of a common sense one, but I like to include it because it is from a very credible source. CDC is the number one source in the nation for mental health and any sorts of health in general. They say that alcohol is a heavy contributor, which from personal experience I can agree with. I'm not a regular drinker, but I will say it does make you feel some type of way, and I can understand how people would abuse it whenever they are upset or suffering from depression. So it's definitely a big factor.